is a truth universally acknowledged that an animal born out of sexual reproduction gets half its DNA from the father and half from the mother. Since DNA is the genetic material, it can be said that we are 50% genetically related to each of our parents. The statements above may give rise to many questions. Isn't there more DNA coming to me from my mother? Aren't DNA and chromosomes the same thing? If I look at my own chromosomes, will I be able to tell the chromosomes I got from my father separate from those I got from my mother? If I am a boy, am I not more genetically related to my dad? After all, I got one whole Y chromosome from him. How close am I to my brother? Genetically, I mean. We are so different. Am I as close to my aunt, who I like, as to my uncle, who I don't like, and so on and so forth? Let's start by understanding a few things first. DNA, the genetic material, is basically information. Information that is written in a language made up of 4 letters: A, T, G, and C. It was a mystery at one point, like some ancient scripts that we're still struggling to understand. But now we can read DNA as easily as the Roman script. Whether we can understand everything that's written there, well, that's a conversation for another time. DNA is the information for manufacturing and operating living beings. Our looks, our constitution, our behavior patterns are largely decided by our DNA. The amount of information is often so large that it is arranged in many volumes, known as chromosomes. This complete library, made up of all the volumes, is called the genome. It is typically stored in the nucleus of each of our cells. Most organisms that we see around us, like dogs, butterflies, and chickens, are made up of cells with nuclei that contain not just one complete set of chromosomes, but two. Such cells and organisms are said to be diploid. Many plants, some fishes, and amphibians have cells with nuclei that contain more than two complete sets of chromosomes, and they are called polyploids. And then there are haploid organisms that contain only one complete set of chromosomes. Let us stop here for a bit. Male honeybees or drones are haploids. All the worker bees are female and diploid. The queen bee is diploid too. Try to figure out how the males who are born from the queen end up having only one set of chromosomes. There is a lot of information available about honeybee genetics. We humans are diploid. Most of our genetic information is organized in 23 chromosomes, and we have two copies of each. The two copies are said to be homologous to each other. For example, we have a homologous pair of chromosome number 8. Men and women differ in only one of the 23 pairs of chromosomes. This pair is called the pair of sex chromosomes. We will talk about them some other time. So, from where do these two sets of chromosomes come? And why do we have two? Each of our two parents gives us one set. That means one set of 23 chromosomes comes from the father, and the other comes from the mother, making it a total of 46 chromosomes. Homologous chromosomes are similar, but not identical. Each of them has come to us from a different parent, and hence is slightly different from the other. Normally, homologous chromosomes have the same sequence of genes, but a gene on one may be slightly different from the gene on the other. It's like they are two sets of Harry Potter books, published by different publishers. The chapters are the same, but the words used in the American version may be slightly different from the ones used in the British version. Or like two sets of playing cards from different decks, same information, different look. Now let us consider one of my nucleated cells, that is, a cell with a nucleus. Let us say a skin cell or a brain cell. This one has, as its ancestor, that first diploid cell, the zygote. We will come to the making of the zygote in a little bit. The zygote, the first diploid cell at the beginning of any human's journey, divides to create two daughter cells. These are genetically identical to the mother cell. Each of these divides to make two more cells, and so on. This kind of cell division, where the daughter cells are genetically like the mother cells, is called mitosis. The journey from a single diploid cell to a multicellular, full-grown adult human is made possible by mitotic cell division. The nucleated cell that we are going to consider is a result from many rounds of mitosis, starting with the zygote. Let's go back to the question. Is it possible to tell, in theory, which chromosomes in the nucleus of my cell originally came from my mother and which ones came from the father? The simple answer to this question is yes. However, this question is not as straightforward as it seems. Here is why. Let's say I pick up the homologous pair of my third chromosome, 3A and 3B, and lay it next to my mother's pair of third chromosomes, 3A prime and 3B prime. If I expect to see one of mine match exactly with one of hers, I'll be disappointed. What I will see, however, is that one of my third chromosomes is a combination of both of her third chromosomes. Similarly, the other is a combination of both copies of my father's third chromosome. What is going on here? When did the parental chromosomes mix? Let's come back to the zygote now, the first diploid cell. It is formed when the haploid sex cell of a mother, the ovum, fuses with the haploid sex cell of a father, the sperm. In our body, the only haploid cells are the sex or germ cells. This makes impeccable sense. The sex cells, male and female, in sexually reproducing diploid organisms must contain only a single copy of the whole set of chromosomes, so that, when they fuse, they make a diploid zygote. Fusion of two diploid cells would result in a tetraploid zygote, and extending that thought further leads to chaos. So, how does a diploid organism make these haploid sex cells? The process by which this can happen is called reduction division or meiosis. This requires a cell division process that starts with a single diploid cell and ends up with 4 haploid cells. Meiosis differs from mitosis in one very important aspect. During meiotic cell division, the homologous chromosomes in the nucleus line up against each other and exchange parts of their DNA. This process is called genetic recombination. This is when the parental chromosomes mix for the first time, when an organism is producing sex cells. In short, my parents' chromosomes will recombine only in my sex cells and will be passed on to my progeny in this new shuffled form. This is one way of bringing variation into the next generation. Chromosomes contain long, coiled strands of DNA. For example, human chromosome 3 has about 300 million base pairs of DNA. It is important to understand that, in principle, recombination may happen between any two bases, and many recombination events can happen between a homologous pair of chromosomes. Because of this, the resulting chromosome in the sex cell is almost invariably unique. This makes the chances of two siblings who are not identical twins being identical extremely low. Now, before we end, it's important to mention the mitochondrial DNA. We have a tiny bit more genetic information in our cells that is not stored in the nucleus. This DNA, a little less than 0.0003% of our total DNA, is present in the mitochondria of our cells. And yes, though amount-wise it doesn't seem much, the mitochondrial DNA does come to us solely from our mothers. More on that at another time. Bye.